The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Yes, coming to you cordless, everybody. I have to push the headphone volume up on the mixer because I'm going deaf. It's terrible. It's Tuesday night, July 9th, 2024. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Sydney, Australia. I should figure out what the time is in Singapore because we had a call last night from Singapore, of all places. But here, we're live in Northeast Minneapolis, right across the Mississippi River from downtown. It's 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time right here. I'm Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters Tonight. This is episode number 134, if you're keeping score at home. God, who would have known it? I just did some counting today. So at the end of this month, on July 31st, is going to be our one-year anniversary. And I think, assuming nothing blows up or anything like that, that show will be number 147, which means all right, we're supposed to be doing shows here 4 nights a week. But if you do some quick math, that's basically almost exactly 3 nights of shows a week. So, we took a lot. I had surgery earlier last month, and we took a lot of time off. So, as a matter of fact, this is going to be the first week where we're going to do 4 shows in a row in like 6 weeks. So I appreciate your patience. Yeah. So we had a couple really good callers last night. I want to thank Mike and Nathan for calling. Mike called from Singapore, and he's an Iranian journalist of all things. And I was like, I read up on the Iranian elections because I wasn't going to talk about that because, there's only so much time here. It's really terrible. Seriously, there's enough news like every day. I could go on for hours. Now, we usually clock in at about, the average show here is about an hour, 40 minutes. Now, because we don't have breaks, we have like one sponsor. We do one commercial and I read it. I do it live. An hour and 40 minutes of continuous show is about a 3-hour radio show, because you guys don't know this, or you probably do know, and it probably bugs the crap out of you, that the average radio show in America is usually about 40 minutes of actual content per hour. The rest of it is taken up by commercials, and usually most talk stations have news on either the top or the top and bottom of the hour. So all that burns up about 18 minutes. So, so it's but I could go on longer about that. I wasn't going to talk about the Iranian election, but Mike called up and we talked about it. I knew enough about it to talk to him about it. So, and also there were elections this last week in Iran, England, and France. So we talked about that too. It's kind of interesting. I mentioned the fact that David Strom, our friend from Hunter.com, he was on here a week ago tomorrow. He was on here last Wednesday, the last show we did before Independence Day. And his theory is that, and I think it's a really good one, he thinks that it's not so much, everyone says that the world's turning toward populism. And he says, no, that's not really true. The world is rejecting whatever the establishment is in their locale. But in most locales, progressivism is the current establishment. And that's the reason populism is coming in. And I think he's got a point there, because the few places that are conservative are being rejected for liberalism. So it's really interesting. People are tired of the status quo, of the way things are going. That's the way it is right now. So what do we got going on here? I'll tell you what, we got it going on. Okay, boomers, queers for Palestine. Just so stupid. I'm never going to let that go. Queers for Palestine is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You wanna be queer? You go to Palestine? You do that. Yeah. What was it? Remember, was it Conaway who actually said he's gonna be on? He's there. I think he said, "Yeah, I'll buy you a ticket." You wanna go you're queer, you wanna go to Palestine? Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. Oh my god. Yeah, Tim Conaway's our guest tonight. He's a former executive editor of Hustler magazine. Not only that, and I should qualify this, he was the editor of Hustler magazine in its heyday in the 80s and 90s. So I mean, he was there for about 15 years, and basically his run as editor was the high point of that magazine's subscription run. So and yes, and we tease him constantly about it. He was the guy who picked out the pictures from the monthly beaver hunt contest. Yeah, he got to do that because he's the editor. So, all right, so you want to talk to Tim? You see there's a ticker going on the bottom of the screen. We replaced the banner with the ticker because it takes up a lot less space. And the banner was ended up over people's mouths and stuff like that. So I put the ticker in. Not only that, it's like it's moving, so it might catch your eye. There's three ways you can call into the show. You can do it with your webcam. You go to a web page, jimandknight.com/call on your device, whatever that is, your device that has a camera. You go to that web page, you click on the giant blue button at the top of the page, and you're in our queue. It's really simple, super simple. If you don't want your face on the screen, you can call in audio, like dial in with your cell phone, just like calling in a radio show. That number is 563-999-3435. It's on the screen. It's on the bottom ticker there too. And if you want to just send us a text in real time, I got this monitor off to the side that's spitting the text out. That number is 408-458-5088. Yeah, call. Want to talk to Tim? Want to ask him about the beaver hunt? It's fine. He's had Tim went on to edit about a dozen different magazines over the course of his career. I think it was either Men's Health or Men's Fitness was one of them, and there was an auto magazine. I can't keep track. Anyway, yeah. So the guy's an experienced journalist, and I want to talk to him about how the lying liars in the media covered up for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party for the last 4, 5, 8 years, and why you shouldn't trust them to save your life. And this is going to we are looking at a debacle of just enormous proportions here. But before I go on to that, let me tell you what's going on here. Thursday night, tomorrow night. Oh, hold on just a second. Oh yeah, yeah. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, Santa Claus. Yeah. Now I've been like talking about this for basically since the beginning of the year. Nobody knows what Santa does during the rest of the year, so we're checking in on Santa about. We're trying to check in about once a quarter. We missed the first quarter because I was ill, but we're checking on Santa. He's apparently going to talk to us from the pool in his backyard, supposedly. We're going to see. So Santa's going to be here. Jeff Meyer, our sponsor, the CEO of our sponsor, Calling News, he might call in too. He is leaving on Thursday. He's going to Africa for 2 weeks, and no, he's not going big game hunting or even even photograph safari. He's going with his church group. He's actually trying to get something done, unlike me who sits home in my underwear and reads the news most of the day. So he's doing real work. He's doing God's real work. So he's going to Africa for a couple of weeks. We have fascinating to schedule him when he comes back. So that's tomorrow night. Thursday night, Mark Tapscott, the congressional correspondent for the Epoch Times in New York City. He's going to be our guest. He's been on several times. Fascinating guy. He's had this beat for 40 years. He knows pretty much everybody on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. on a first name basis. He knows so we will get the scuttle. I mean, usually he has. He would hate it if I said this, but I would say gossip or innuendo about stuff that's going on that you don't hear anywhere else. So I'm really looking forward to that. He will have a really good take on what's going on with the whole Biden. What did I call it? I called it Biden dementia crisis. Yeah, there's Trump derangement syndrome (TDS) and Biden dementia crisis, that BDC. Excuse me. So yeah, that's on Thursday. Next Tuesday, we got a guy named Steve McIntosh coming on. He's an author. He's written like half a dozen books. He calls himself a developmental philosopher. And the really interesting thing is he deals with spiritual philosophy and politics. I mean, this is going to be a fantastic fit. I'm really looking forward to this a lot. The guy's written like half a dozen books. Should be really fascinating. And on Wednesday, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from redstate.com and asagirlturns.com, she's coming on. Next week, Monday through Thursday, is the Republican National Convention. I don't have it on our schedule on our website, but I'm hoping to get the month in review panel to come on after Trump's speech on Thursday night. That's what I'm going to try to do. I haven't sent them emails out yet. Usually they're amenable to this sort of thing. Depends on how many people can't make it. So, whatever. But I'll deal with that. Our schedule, you can always see your schedule on the front page at jimandnight.com. It's always there. I told you how to call in. Please call in. You have questions for Tim. You want a comment for Tim. You want harassment for Tim. It's fine. Or harassment for me or whatever. Now, and so these two guys called in last night. It was Monologue Monday. And you'll notice I have nothing on the schedule for next Monday. That's probably going to be Monologue Monday too, even though the convention starts on Monday night. Although I don't think a lot gets done on Monday, but we'll see. As a general rule, I don't have guests. We don't have guests on Monday as a general rule. But we might make an exception next Monday. But at any rate, one of them mentioned, I think it was Nathan. I didn't catch where Nathan's from, but he's a truck driver, and he says he usually drives overnight. And I don't think he was listening to our show in the truck, which would be possible. I mean, we're on Blog Talk Radio, which is audio only, and that it's really, and even still, we're live, and you can, and yeah, I really do have to emphasize this. This show is live, and tonight, Tim Conaway, our guests. Sometimes our guests aren't live because it's 11:30 on the East Coast, and people don't want to do interviews at 11:30 at night. So about half of our guests we pre-tape the interviews. But tonight, Tim Conaway, he's live. The whole show's live. If you're listening to it, if it's what's the time here? Hold on, it's 10:15. If it's 11:15 on the East Coast or 8:15 on Pacific Coast, you're listening. This is a live show. You can always watch it on Rumble and YouTube and Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, after the fact. Yes, you can. But it's live, and we do it live. So yeah, like I said, we got it going on. And like I said last night, my wife says, "Okay, boomer." Yeah, that's right. Okay, so let me show you. I was talking about our sponsor, Jeff Meyer. Here's his website. It's Conk News at conk.com. I'm the former editor of Conk News. Proud to be associated with the organization. This is, um, this Conk is a news aggregator. It's the best news aggregator on the internet. I'm not kidding. You should go to Drudge or whatever, or you go to there's one called Liberty, I think it is. No, this puts all of them to shame. It really does. First of all, it updates automatically every 3 hours. So every 3 hours, the servers at Conk News go out to 75 different news sources, grab all the new articles, bring them back, lay them out on the front page in chronological order. And this is the real important thing. It's not chronological based on where they're from. It's chronological, period. The newest stories, regardless of the source, go at the top. So, like I can't see this here. The screenshot you're looking at right now. This is the front page of Conk News right now in real time. At the bottom left corner, there's little icons, and those icons are the icons of the news source that they're coming from. And if you click the little icons, you go to the front page. But if you click the photo or the headline, you go directly to that story. But so we got here on my pictures on the right. That's because they sponsor this. So it's really cool. That's hotair.com on the left, and in the center, I think that's the New York Post. I think because the New York Post does not actually have an avatar, an icon. So at any rate, yeah, if you click on a picture or a headline, you go directly to that story. The pictures, the photos are from the stories themselves. The headlines are not rewritten. The headlines are from the stories. And when you click through, you don't go to an interstitial page. You don't go to an ad. You don't go to the front page of the website. You go directly to that story. And the thing is, this is all free. There's some ads on this page, but you don't have to register. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to log in, and you don't have to pay. And every 3 hours, this changes. About 80% of the stories change every 3 hours. So you can come at 10 a.m. There's enough stories here. If you click through on a few of them, you can actually spend a couple hours reading this. And, you come at 10 a.m. At 3 p.m., 80% of it's different. You really can't. I can't emphasize this enough. This is the best news anchor on the internet, period. So it's at conk.com, Conk News at conk.com. There we go. And believe it or not, Tim Conaway's here, and I'm going to play 12 seconds of bumper music and put them on. Here we go. Yes, it's you. It's you.
Yeah, here I am, and I have pants on.
That's good.
As you instructed.
That's good, because you don't. There might be an emergency. You might have to stand up, and that would not be good.
That's true, yeah.
I gave you a big build up. I don't know if you heard it.
Oh no, I was. For some reason, I can't get my high-tech camera to work unless I unplug it and plug it and unplug it and plug it about 6 times.
Ah,
So I was doing that.
that's too bad. I'm gonna cry now.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get right to it.
All
How
right.
do you? All right, you were a journalist for 40 years, and you were an editor, and I was telling, were you the editor of Men's Fitness or Men's Health?
Well, it was when I was there. It was called Sports Fitness.
Sports Fitness.
And then later they changed the name to Men's Fitness.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
For some reason, but Muscle and Fitness was the parent magazine, and we had one Flex for the hardcore bodybuilders, and then we started the Sports Fitness, and I was around many years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, you got it going. You take care of the business. That's what you did. We might end this with you doing your Larry Flint imitation, but we'll get to that later. Okay, so all right. So if you work for any of these major news organizations, you've been covering for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party for 4 years now, and your cover's been blown. How do you recover from this?
Oh, you mean you've been
exposed?
Yeah, handing out, just taking the handouts from Jean-Pierre Nut, Chris here at the White House and stuff. Well, I don't know that in modern media that you have to recover from that. The people that pay you, that's what they expect. If you went off script and you challenged, you did that kind of stuff, you would probably get demoted to some other situation. So there's, these people are doing what they get paid for. Some of these people, in my opinion, think that they're doing their job. They don't know that they're not the elite of journalism, in my opinion.
Yeah, but Tim, if they're not the elites of journalism, who the hell is?
Well, the elites of journalism don't usually work. There are some outlets where somebody who does their job, gets the information, reports it as it stands, and the publisher, the editors, the advertising director don't get involved in the process. but there are very few outlets that are like that. So, in today's world, the good journalists are doing their own, podcasts or doing their own blogs or doing that kind of stuff. And the few outlets that, uh, really support good journalism are where they work. For the most part, these places, and it's not just at the high level with Biden, it's your local paper. The publisher who probably came from the advertising side. The publisher originally is the guy that owns the thing, but eventually the publisher gets promoted out of the advertising department because they bring in the large share of revenue. Um, the editor of the thing, somebody from the editorial side, almost never gets promoted to publisher. So they play golf with the wealthy and elite, the advertisers. And the advertisers complain about something. They don't they don't want to upset the advertisers, and they don't have an editorial point of view. They have um, what are we doing? Uh, you know, they've got their own idea of what the marketplace is and what the marketplace wants and will accept from a newspaper or radio station or whatever it is, all the way up from the small local papers to the big city papers and big city TV. So TV, I think is the worst because it's the news department is entertainment, and they have the good-looking people giving you the news, and they don't challenge anything. They don't question authority, and that works just fine for everybody.
So are you saying that this whole debacle basically comes from the very top of these
Oh,
organizations?
sure. Every organization comes from the top down, and if it were the people who come out of journalism schools, there's still some very good journalism schools in this country, and Jen Kabani has heard uh, on the college fix. All these young uh, college journalists who are
Yeah.
trying to do it the right way and that kind of stuff. If it came from that end up, it would be a whole different world, a whole different way of things happening. But no, it's all from the top down. Don't upset the readers. Don't upset the advertisers. First of all, don't uh, we think most of our readers are this way or that way, so we're going to give them this slant on everything. There, and it seems to me in reading, because I still do read newspapers, uh, in reading these things that the editors are at the top aren't doing their jobs like it used to be. If I handed in a piece and it raised more questions than it answered, I would get challenged on that. If I handed in a piece where I made statements as if they were facts, but I didn't have an attribution for that statement, I didn't have, the police spokesperson said, or this politician said, or this council person said. If I just stated the thing without uh, uh, the statement coming from an authority, I would be challenged on that. How can you say that? Uh, Now it's like people write the story and they write. I don't see anybody being cited as the source of that information, but it's stated as fact. And there was a lot of opinion in these pieces stated as fact.
No shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that's been lost, and I know we talked about this quite a long time ago. I think we did anyway, about the fact that like 60 years ago, like in 1964, you could pick up a copy of the New York Times and it was about the same number of pages it is now. I don't know how many that'd be over sections, maybe 80. And you'd probably find one typo in the whole paper. Now, because of our art of and the job of proofreading is completely lost,
Yeah.
these even the hard copies of newspapers are riddled with typos. I mean, I just find this astonishing. I mean, this when we were kids, when we were young, this is like the sin. Now no one gives a crap.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and it's not just typos; it's grammatical errors. It's misuse. Words are misused. It's not appropriate. Yeah, there's no copy editor anymore because the people at the top think that function is performed by your word processing software, and it'll catch the typos, and it'll catch. But as I explained to a guy when I was doing magazines, and he wanted to get rid of all the copy editors because his main job was not to spend any money. And that's the other part of people being in charge is, we can get rid of these, we can get rid of those. We want to get rid of copy editors. And he said, can't the software catch the typos? And I said, well, the software can tell you if you've got the word FROM that's spelled correctly, or if you've got the word FORM. It'll tell you, if it's spelled correctly, it won't do anything.
Right.
Which is the correct word in there. If somebody fat fingered the keys and meant to spell form instead of from, the software won't catch that. Now, some of the softwares come along to the point where, okay, it will underline that if it doesn't make sense. But if the person is going as fast as they can and trying to get this thing done and trying to get it in, then they might not ever look at those little squiggly underlines and the copy editing whatever that software is.
Hey Tim, have you played with AI at all yourself?
Not really. To me, AI, artificial intelligence. Well, the first keyword there is artificial. And the other part of it is it's not intelligence, it's advanced data processing.
Yeah.
You take information and you put it in there, and it's the old, when we were first using computers for stuff, there was the garbage in, garbage out. So what information is this thing, facing? It's
That's the reason I asked, is because I think the people who think that this is going to replace journalists, maybe in 20 years, it's a mess right now. I mean, this stuff doesn't work at all,
Well, the thing is, you can't. Who's going to ask the questions? Is this stuff? This going to listen to a speech? Imagine listening to Kamala Harris, and then writing a report based on that. So it's whatever is fed into the system is part of what it's going to spit back out. So if it's stupid shit, then you're going to get stupid shit. Joe, I want to say I'm proud to have been the first Black Asian to have served dinner to a Black president of a major national corporation. And you take the stuff Joe Biden says and the stuff that Donald Trump says. I mean, Trump can babble on, and you feed that into AI, and then you have it give a report on that. I mean, you could get some amazing things out of it, certainly. But the only place where I've seen AI that so far has had any value is a friend of mine. He's fascinated with this AI thing, and he will feed.
I'm sorry, who?
A friend of mine, a guy
okay,
for a long time, and he will feed something in and get these images, from it. And he'll feed bent copper taking a bribe, and so you've got, copper pipes and somebody slipping him money and stuff, and and he's pretty clever. So, the stuff that he gives you, he ends up with some really twisted images. But that's all a joke. Uh, if you were really, I suppose you could, if you put a little more effort into what you ask for, you could get some interesting images. Uh, but still, it's not anything that has a functional outcome.
The guy on the right of your screen is Tim Conaway, legendary editor, and you can call in and talk to us. Numbers on the and URLs on the bottom of the screen. There you go. Okay, so let me see. Let me get my shit together here. Well, what do you think is going to happen? You have a prediction on this thing about? Do you think that Biden's going to be replaced?
I think everybody in the Democratic National Corporation wants to replace him. It's like all of a sudden, you've got this giant money-making machine, and all of a sudden, good old Uncle Googly, who's been at the helm, has been around the company for a long time, and everybody has to respect him, goes off the far end of things, and it's like, well, how do we replace this guy? Because he's a major stockholder, and he's got all these people that are beholden to him and all that kind of stuff. If anybody in the Democratic Party had any kind of courage, they would sit him down and say, "You're out." But for some reason, they're afraid to do that.
Well, hey, before you go on here, there's an article in Breitbart that was just published a few hours ago. This is James Carville. Remember him? He was a campaign manager for Clinton. He's 80 years old now. He's become kind of an old fart. Kind of. I'll say like me. I won't include you in that. Here is his quote about this. He says he's going to come. This is talking about Biden. He's going to come to the conclusion that this is just not a good idea. He's going to resist it, and he's going to listen to his family. I don't predict things. He's talking about himself now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you it's inevitable. He will come to the conclusion. People will get the message to him. He will understand. His family will understand. They'll pray on it, and he'll make the right decision. I don't have any doubt about it. And I got to say, I just think he's completely naive. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I don't think, I mean, Biden might get out, but if it happens, it'll be kicking and screaming.
That's right. That's exactly right. You got to force this guy out. Look, he was in the Senate for 37 years.
Yeah.
Which is way too long for anybody to be in the Senate. And he never accomplished anything in 37 years, but he felt like he had the right to be there. The longer they're in, the more they feel like they have the right to be there. Not that it's the voters' choice. It's like they, and then he gets to be vice president. And, and then it was only because of all those years of contributing to the party, a major fundraiser for the Democratic National Corporation, that they let him run for president, and because he felt like he needed to be there. I'm sure that there were a lot of people in the party that didn't want this geezer, this loser, to be in there, but yeah, there he was. And the only thing in his favor was that there were a lot of people who were voting against Donald Trump, not voting for Biden.
Right.
But yeah, he's in there now, and once the king is on the throne, try to tell the guy he's got to step aside. That's what I mean. The Democratic Party has to force him out. They have to take the strong action. But they're also hampered by the fact that they don't have anybody else lined up to take his place.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, everyone seems to come to the conclusion now that if they do force him out, or if he does leave, Kamala's they have to give it to her just because she's standing there. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, and again, why? I
Yeah,
don't. You know, they know that she doesn't have a chance. The straw polls. The what if she ran? What if Gavin Newsom ran? You know, how can you get worse than Kamala Harris? You get Gavin Newsom to run. You know, there are people. There got to be somebody in the Democratic Party that would be a stronger candidate for that. But again, it's like, oh no, we're only considering these people who are just uh, absolutely anathema to the general public. You know, the woke crowd, well, golly gee, but that's really, folks, that's not a whole lot of people. And yeah, so they've got that problem. It's like, unfortunately for them, Biden is a stronger candidate than anybody else they
yeah.
have.
So has this occurred to you, Tim? You and I are both of a certain age. This is starting to go down almost exactly like 1980 did, Carter and Reagan. You know, but here's the real difference, the way I see it anyway. Everyone knew, including his supporters and Carter himself, that things weren't going well. These people, when I say these people, I mean the Democratic Party and the Biden machine, they've just completely gaslight everything. It's like they seem to think you know, if you listen to them, Biden's doing a fantastic job. And I just find that you know, like, what planet are you on? You know, it's like, I don't know. I mean, this is it's not a good look. I mean, I think they're kind of like the whole Democratic machine is kind of grinding itself into obsolescence, but that's the way I'm looking at it.
Well, and you know, they've got to put that to the public facing. They've got to say, oh, he's doing a good job, you know, all that kind of stuff. But to themselves, if they actually believe that, then, you know, they've got a bigger problem than just the fact that they don't have the courage to stand
Yeah,
up.
but do you think that happened 40 years ago in 1980? I don't think that. I mean, I don't think people were really gaslighting the public about Carter's performance, including Carter himself.
Well, yeah, it was different times, different people. It's, you know, now it's a big lie, and it's and to me, the really sad part of it is these people don't want to get into office to do the job. It's all part of keeping the party, uh, you know, financially healthy,
Yeah,
keeping the party prominent. It's all for that. You know, Trump's a little bit different because his ego is bigger than the party. You know, he's doing it for himself, but he's not doing it, in my mind, for the right reasons to run for that office. But and and the reason the Republicans won't try to push him aside is because they're getting a lot of money through this guy.
I heard
Unfortunately,
Tim. I heard a psychologist talk about this. Found this really fascinating. He was talking about Trump, about the fact that, all right, Trump's a narcissist and egomaniac. Okay, well, let's say that. But this guy said, but Trump also, he's enough of an egomaniac to know that he wants people to love him because he did a good job. In other words, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not like discounting his egocentrism there, but like Trump wants it to be legitimate because he legitimately wants the love. Whereas, like, you know, a guy like Biden doesn't seem to care. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? Do you think there's any truth to that, or?
well, yeah, there's some. He wants people to think he's doing a good job, and you know, and he'll put that spin on it if he has to. Um, but you know, it's neither one of these guys impresses me. And my wife, who's been more interested in politics just recently to all this stuff than like in her whole lifetime before this, uh, was saying that, you know, there was some poll that was done showed that a large percentage of uh, the voting population doesn't want either one of these guys.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely. And there's another thing too, and that is if in a reasonably just world, Biden's doing so badly that Trump should be 20 points ahead, and he's not. And I think that's testament to how much people dislike him.
Yeah, well, and it's they don't like either one of them. So what do you do? Well, if you get like a 29% voter turnout,
Yeah,
it still counts.
right.
Which is kind of too bad. There was a guy who wanted to run, who would have been a great alternative to these guys, but he just didn't have the money and
Who's that?
the team of
Sorry.
people. Good-looking guy. He's got his pants on right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that guy. Right. Yeah.
So my wife said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, you vote for Robert Kennedy Jr." And she says, "Well, he's wackier than Trump." So,
Well, if he was running for president and didn't have pants on, that would be a scandal. But right now, it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, what do you do? The collapse of people are worried that there's going to be some giant struggle and everybody's out in the streets and all that kind of stuff. But it's just like, if you get a 30% voter turnout for the election, that's the end of democracy. People just stop participating in the thing. And, by the next time around, it'll be even less than that.
Yeah.
You could shut down half of the federal government, just close up a lot of these departments.
You just should.
Yeah, well, yeah, you should. And actually, people would get along just fine.
No one would notice. You could shut down half the federal government, at least not the non-defense part, and nobody would notice at all.
Right. There are a few things, and people need to be weaned. The country needs to be weaned off Social Security, but that's a process that would take 20 or 25 years to do it the right way. And you don't have the stability of governments unless you get a long run of the same people. But yeah, I mean the government, they want us to be dependent on the government, which is not the way it's supposed to work. They should be dependent on us, taking care of the business that the Constitution allows them to, and not being able to do all these other things that they didn't have the constitutional authority to do. But I just remember one of the first times, I was still in LA, I think, but the government shut down. The federal government had to shut down because they couldn't come to, a budget agreement, which they always leave to the last minute, and then they always try to cram a bunch of useless crap into it because of the frenzy, the desperation to get it passed. But it shut down, and it was shut down for a couple of months, and I just every day was saying, "Do you even notice? Does anybody even care? Does it make a difference?" No, it didn't make one bit of difference in people's lives that the government wasn't, going on.
But are we printing too much useless money? I mean, right now, the national debt is 120% of our gross national product. That's nuts. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, we're printing too much money. We're giving away too much money around the world.
Yeah.
The dollar would be much stronger if we didn't give away $47 billion in foreign aid.
I keep, I got my friend, he's in finance, he watches the show, he laughs at me because he said, I just don't see, at some point, you just can't release that much useless money and something bad not happening. That's why I look at this.
Oh, yeah. It's the Federal Reserve and Dr. Sabrin talks about it, is, having it in control of our economy, it's a mistake. And just like, oh, well, we'll just print more money. The budget thing, instead of, and I know why they do it, I just said that it's a way to force the issue on a lot of things and get away with a lot of stuff. But the budget should be the first thing that Congress does, it should, and it should be just a budget. It should, and the president, whoever it is, should be able to go through it and just strike out. Oh, look, somebody's stuck in some pork barrel legislation here. Somebody's stuck in something doesn't have anything to do with the government, but it's one of these, regulatory things that we can sneak in. There's all kinds of stuff that goes into these, and because of that last minute desperation, uh, nobody, even reads it. It's just like, oh, we've got to pass this budget, because we can't shut down the government. Uh, but the president should be able to go through, and of course, who can read a 7,000 page document? But
Yeah.
that's why you've got, 4,000 people in the White House staff. Is you get these four people in there, 4,000 people, and you say everybody reads, 10 pages or whatever, and bring back anything that's not a budget item. Let me know. I'm going to strike it out and send it back to veto, send it back to House and Senate and say, take this stuff out, pass that, and I'll sign it.
Nothing in politics over the last 20 years has pissed me off more, I think, than Nancy Pelosi talking about Obamacare and saying, if you want to know what's in the bill, you got to pass it first. It was 2,000 pages. And I remember this. Fox News assigned a reporter to read the whole thing. It took her, she did it 40 hours a week. It took her a month. It took her 4 weeks to read it. She's probably the only person who's ever read the whole thing.
Yeah.
That one person.
And and I know Eric Paulson, who was a U.S. representative from the district here in Minnesota where I live, and I was talking to him about it. He said they got it, like less than 24 hours before they were supposed to vote on it. It was 2,000 pages.
Right.
And, what do you do? Of course, he voted against it, and which is the other thing. It's like they hand this to you, 2,000 pages, and say, "Oh, we're going to vote on it tomorrow," and you say, "No, I'm not going to vote on it." All these people should say, "I'm not going to vote on it until I've had a chance to read it, or have my staff, divide it up and read it and get information back to me." There's no deadline for any of this. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they have to, pass a bill within 24 hours of it being, coming out of committee or anything else. So again, these people need to stand up. He was one of the people that was trying to change the good old boy, deep state swamp, whatever you want to call it. The cigar smoke-filled back rooms where all everything was actually decided and all that kind of stuff. And he did not get the proper support from the party, and so the seat flipped over to a Democrat, and who's another one of these feel-good guys. The Clintons, people might not remember this, but they tried to pass some universal health care thing. That was the first big thing they tried to bring forward.
Right.
Bill had put Hillary in charge of the effort. She was the White House spokesperson for it, and they came up with a 6,000 page
I did not know that
manifesto, and the Clintons just about got laughed out of Washington because of this thing.
Yeah.
And so after that, they didn't try to push anything. They just kind of, went along with whatever came along. I don't know if he ever vetoed anything. It was just like, oh, well, people laughed at us, and so we just take it easy and collect the paycheck.
I will say that at the end of the day, Obamacare is a complete and utter failure because it didn't accomplish what it was trying to do at all, and that's make medical prices less expensive for most people. It simply didn't do that.
Well, they like everything the government does, they were throwing the money at the wrong end of the problem.
That's right. Yes.
Instead of if they'd come out with something that uh, supported, gave financial support to medical training, to the doctors. It's you go to college, you spend 3 more years trying to get into something, then you've got to be a resident, you do your internship, you got to be a resident, you get all this kind of stuff, uh, and so no wonder, after all that training and all the debt that they go into to do that, that they charge these high prices. You, the high cost of medical equipment, testing equipment, and other kind of equipment. Subsidize that. Subsidize the education for these people. Subsidize the education for nurses. Then, when they come out, this stuff, they're not in debt or in as much debt. They don't have the medical equipment. That kind of stuff doesn't have a high cost. But that's throwing the money at the root cause of the problem, and the government never does that. It's always at the ass end of it, and basically they're making uh, the citizen responsible for trying to fix this. And then the whole insurance thing, and Jeff Myers done commented on this a lot of times, but the whole way that we do health insurance needs to be modified. And that's not something the government should do. That's something that individual citizens can bring about by kind of demanding a new path in that. And I won't go into all the details, but anybody who's watched your show or, has listened to Jeff talk about it knows that, there's a way to.
He might come on tomorrow night, so I'll ask him about it.
Yeah, ask him about, his way to do individual health insurance. And it's, there are a lot of people out there that are promoting that instead of these group things and these individual policies that work better for you.
Well, let me give you an example of you're talking about all the payments regarding medical schooling and stuff. So my dentist just retired like a few months ago. She's 65. This is about 5-7 years ago. She was in her late 50s, maybe 60. I come in her office one day. They're having a big party. I said, "What are you celebrating?" And she says, "I just paid off my practice." She's like 50, 58, 59 years old, and she just paid off, the millions of dollars of loans for equipment and all that sort of stuff. I mean, and her schooling both. I mean, it's like that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's nuts.
exactly. And one of the things that gets me, because we're older, so we go to the doctor, we do things, uh, and of course, they want medical care has gone down the hill just the way journalism has, in my opinion. If they can't send you for an expensive test, or they can't prescribe some kind of medication that you're going to have to take every day for the rest of your life, they really can't help you. But uh, so we'll go and do this stuff, and then we'll get the insurance report on the thing, and it will say the charge for this was $450, whatever, the doctor's visit was $450, but Blue Cross Blue Shield will pay $170, and then the rest of it nobody has to pay. We don't have to pay that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if the doctor will accept $170 for this, why isn't that the charge? That's so. And of course, if you don't have insurance, you got to pay the $450. But it's like you used to go for this test, and the test is $1,200. Well, we'll pay $372 for that, and the rest is written off. So it's like, okay, well, if you'll take 372. Why isn't that the charge for this thing? And if those were the actual charges for the stuff, well, insurance is paying the difference anyway. But it, I don't understand why $172 is acceptable, but from a 400, but they charge 450. It's one of those mysteries.
It's going to sound like I'm changing the subject here, but I'm kind of not. So, the employment, Biden's big boast is that he created all these jobs. So this last month, yeah, right, I know, that's what I'm getting at here. This last month, supposedly 205,000 jobs were created in America. Now, I don't know if you've been following this. Basically, for the entirety of Biden's presidency, with the exception of one single month, which I think was in February, March of this year, with one exception, every time these numbers come out, the following month they've been revised down, sometimes significantly. But here's the real thing. Of the 205,000 jobs created last month, 1/3 of them were jobs with the federal government. And over the course of the last 3 years, 25% of them on average every month have been jobs created with the federal government. And you don't have to be an economist to know that that does not contribute to the productivity of the country at all. They should not be counted. They should not be counted.
It contributes to the national debt. It contributes to, the tax burden. And, any of these numbers you get from the government are really suspect anyway. But, most of the jobs that people got hired for during the Biden administration were the jobs that were lost during the pandemic due to all the forced closures of everything.
Right.
And, so and it's like Trump said that he just called them bounce back jobs. And I think that's a good term for them. And you've got all these, we're adding all these people, in the federal government, which is already bloated. Before they started adding all these people, there was something like 2.5 million people working for the federal government.
Yeah, I've heard 4 million people.
Well, when you take in all the private contractors, because it's not enough that you got 2.5 million people do whatever it is they're supposed to be doing in the federal government, but you have to reach out and hire private contractors on top of that.
Yeah.
So that's where you get it's over 4 million people now that are getting paid taxpayer dollars. And, I guess they're paying taxes too, but, it's really incredibly bad. Unemployment numbers are based on the people who are on the unemployment rolls at that time. It doesn't include people who are unemployed but have fallen off the unemployment benefits.
Right, that's true. Yes.
So it's never an accurate update.
No.
Of those kind of things. Just like when they're talking about, inflationary numbers, they don't include volatile items like food and energy.
Yes.
If you don't eat and you can't keep your house warm, but it's like, we're not including those in that. Well, guess what? Groceries have gone up like.
If you don't eat or have heat, you don't have a problem.
Yeah. Well, you won't suffer from inflation. But they say they don't count that stuff. So, it's like polls and surveys. I don't believe any of that stuff has any real value. It might be some kind of general indicator, but usually it's bullshit.
So you're talking about taxes. I'll leave you with this. So Jeff Bezos moved this last year. He moved from Washington to Florida. He's like arguably the richest man in the world, easily one of the top 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know this, but excuse me. I knew that Florida had no state income taxes. I didn't know that Washington didn't. I didn't know that. But Washington 2 years ago, they instituted a capital gains tax. And the first year, which I think was 2022, they made $770 million, which was significantly more than they thought they would. The next year, which was last year, they only made like 450. It went way down, and that's because people figured out, my God, if I move out of the state, I don't have to pay this. Jeff Bezos saved himself $1 billion by moving from Washington to Florida. $1 billion that would have went to the state of Washington. And I don't want to do that. And his claim is that he did not do it for tax purposes. He did it to be closer to his family. Blah 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 blah. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't believe billionaires either, but yeah. Well,
I'll say this: it's a testament of the fact that one of the great things about America is that we have these 50 states, and although the 10th Amendment gets ignored constantly, the fact of the matter is they still compete against each other, and competition is the best single thing that keeps everything honest.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing. The U.S. Constitution built a structure of federal government, and it set out exactly what the government could do. And the federal government was intended to be, say, more of a support system. The independent states, because it's a republic of independent states. It's not like, France or Spain or Britain or anything where it's, everything is, the federal government is in charge of everything. The states would remain independent. The job of the federal government was simply to handle those things that would not be appropriate or efficient for an individual state to handle. So things like customs and tariffs,
interstate commerce,
the currency, the monetary system, so that that's uniform across all the states. There are 8 specific things that are laid out for that Congress has the power to act on, and that was based on the fact that it was better for them to do it than for individual states to each try to make it treaty. If South Carolina and Alabama each wanted to make their own treaty with some foreign country, that wasn't going to work out. But that was supposed to be it. It was supposed to be like the U.S. government was supposed to be a support network for the states in terms of things that affected all the states. And the independent states were supposed to do their own thing. And fortunately, they still do that. In California, they've ruined themselves for many years. They've been ruining themselves and sending business away, and now they're sending a lot of people away. People are going to Texas because there's a much better tax structure in Texas. Things like in Nevada and Idaho and Utah and stuff that, when I was out there, some of the magazines that we had were firearms magazines, and we had, a knife magazine and some stuff like that. And all these people who did business in California were moving out of the state. And, this is in the late 80s, early 90s. Buck Knives has been in San Diego since it started. They moved to Nevada or Arizona, one of the others. All these people, because the business climate wasn't good for any of them. Ammunition manufacturers, firearms manufacturers that were based out there, all moved away from California. Well, California can do what they want to do, but people that are making a lot of money and don't want to pay all the taxes for that, they can decide to leave. Businesses can decide to leave, and they can go, like you say, to a better climate. It's more competitive for them, and these other states gain from it because these people are still, paying their business taxes. They're paying income taxes if there is a state income tax, uh, but it's a lower tax on people. So, again, the federal government, if it was shrunk back down to what it was originally intended to be, it's not supposed to be in charge of the United States. It's not supposed to be the superior uh, governing body. If shrink it down to what it was supposed to be and let the states do their own thing, it would be a much more interesting situation. But, try to take power away from the people who've got power.
Hey, before you leave, you want to tell the story of how you met Larry Flint? I think it's pretty interesting. If you don't want to, that's fine. But
Oh yeah, I can tell you. So I was a reporter in Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah.
And part of what I covered, the paper was based in a city on the northeast corner of the state, but we covered the whole that whole kind of northeastern edge of the state. And so I was one of the reporters that was on the regional team that went out to these other counties. Kentucky counties are small by constitution. Their constitution was in 1790 or something like that, and they said that the county seat could not be more than a day's ride on horseback from any part of the county. So the counties are very small, and it's mostly rural, and a lot of
whoops.
from some parts of the state. Eastern part of the state is really rugged and really mountainous, and so there's very industry there, but not a lot of people in a lot of these places. So anyway, down in one of the areas I covered was the county in Kentucky that Larry was originally from, and so he made news in 1975 when he published pictures of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis nude. She was frolicking on the beach and swimming on this private island that Onassis owned, and some guy with a 600 millimeter lens, offshore, took pictures of her. Nobody wanted to publish them. They were all afraid, afraid of the Kennedys, and they were, some of them afraid of Onassis. Flint said, this is an opportunity. And so he bought the pictures. He actually went into debt to buy the pictures and ran them. And he got this tremendous amount of news coverage for doing it. Well, mostly it was negative from the attitude.
Yes, but all publicity is good publicity.
But that's what he always said. And he said, there ain't no such thing as bad publicity. And the magazine just skyrocketed. And then once people got a look at the other stuff that was going on, they liked it. But anyway, my editor came to me and said, this guy, he's from Elliott County. And Elliott County is one of the poorest counties in all of Kentucky. And said, call him up or see if you can get an interview with him. So I called him up. So he's actually on his way down to Elliott County because his dad spends time with him, but his dad still lives at home down at the old, farmhouse in Elliott County. And so he stopped by the office and I thought we were going to do a little interview. Well, he was there for 2 hours.
Was it just you talking to him?
Yeah, and it was on a Saturday, and after the paper it was an afternoon paper, so after it was put to bed in the morning on Saturday, everybody split, and so it was just me and him in the afternoon. He spent about 10 minutes talking about porn, and he spent the rest of the 2 hours talking about the First Amendment, talking about the influence of advertisers on publication, all that kind of stuff. And I was really, because what I've read in some other articles that have been done on him, he was a guy who never went past the eighth grade, Eastern Kentucky, hillbilly, all this kind of stuff. He really very knowledgeable. And so anyway, we talked.
And what
so
are you about what, 23, 25 years old?
I mean, it was about 25, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I write up the article about him. Well, the executive editor comes in like the next day. I gave it to my editor, and the executive editor comes in the next day with my article, and he throws it down on my desk, and he says, "We're not running this. He says, this guy's nothing but a criminal." And I'm thinking, well, did you read the article? Do you see what he's talking about? But anyway, the guy giving me 2 hours of his time, and his dad had been sitting out in the car the whole time. And so I called him up and I said, I got to apologize, but they're not going to run the article that I wrote about you. And he said, well, send me a copy of it. So I sent him a copy of it. And about a week later, I get a call from him, and he says, I want you to come to work for me. And this is where I was in Kentucky. He was in Columbus, Ohio. And where I lived actually on the Ohio side of the river. It was about a 2.5 hour drive up there. So said, I want you to come to work for me. And I'd been at the paper for about almost 3 years or 3.5 years. And I had always wanted to work for magazines. I had not wanted to be a newspaper reporter, but you got to get your time in and, get your credentials and stuff. Plus, it was like, this whole thing of the advertiser influence, started to see all those kind of things going on. So I said, yeah, I came to work for him. And so I worked for him for about 3 years, including moving to California. Then I worked for other publications for a while. I don't know, it was about 8 years or something. And then I was brought back when they wanted to expand out of porn. They weren't going to stop doing porn, but they wanted to do magazines and all kind of subjects, all kind of stuff. And so I came back to run that, and we went from 3 magazines in 1984 to 36 magazines in 1995, and all but one of those that we added on. There was one other porn magazine we added.
When you first started working for him, he offered you, I mean, you don't need to say, but he offered you a substantial amount of money, right?
Oh yeah, it was quite a lot more than I was making at the newspaper. And for at that time, 1975, it was pretty good money. And he always paid well. He knew to get good people, he paid well. And at the time I came in, he brought in a couple of people who were working on a magazine in San Francisco called City. It was a magazine about San Francisco. It's kind of like the Village Voice, only having a little bit more edge on it. He brought in a guy from New York. He brought in a guy who'd been working on Philadelphia newspapers. So there were a whole lot of us who showed up there kind of at the same time, and because he wanted something more than just what he had. He wanted in-depth investigative reporting, the Q&A, the question and answer style stuff. He wanted some really good fiction. I mean, we got people like Charles Bukowski and other fiction writers to contribute. During the time that I was there, well, in 1976, I believe it was, we did an article about child abuse. And when I worked for the newspapers, I wanted to do an article about child abuse because I knew a woman, a former, not exactly classmate, but we had gone to school together in different years, who
Hmm.
was a nurse who told me about all these kids coming in with injuries and stuff. I said, we don't run that in a family newspaper. That was kind of the attitude. And I don't know what a family newspaper is, but it's like
Yeah.
it had to be PG rated. Um, so we did this article on child abuse from a guy in the whatever the government health department is, under the Surgeon General, who had compiled this big thing. He wrote the article. We had all these pictures that, man,
And Larry had no trouble running that. Huh.
yeah, he said, yeah, we're going to run this. And then, it was after that that articles about child abuse started showing up in newspapers and stuff. I don't know if we had the single influence on it, but we had some of that. We ran an article about, it was called VD, well, venereal disease, a sexually transmitted disease.
Something new.
Yeah, and because it was a big issue of sex. But again, we had these government. The guy who wrote it was one of our staff writer and editors, but he spoke to all these high level officials about it, and it was the first. It mentioned a new disease that had come out that was showing up in the gay community, and it didn't yet have a name, which turned out to be AIDS. So
Yeah.
we were the first
Right.
people in the country to do something about AIDS. So, what Larry wanted was much more in line with what I wanted to do. He tried to sell advertising, and advertisers, hated his magazine. The difference between Hustler and Playboy at that time was in Hustler, you could see the woman's vagina.
Right.
In Playboy, you could see the pubic hair, but you
Yeah.
never saw the pink. And so, but the advertisers all rejected him. So he said, okay, we'll do this. And he ran these anti-smoking ads, and cigarettes were a big part of print advertising at the time. We ran these anti-smoking ads where we had these lungs that had been taken out of the bodies of people who died of lung cancer, and
Yeah.
it looked like they'd been dipped in tar. Um, we ran all kind of other ad parodies where we make fun of people. So it wasn't just a porn magazine. It was, it had this attitude and this voice, and it was also aimed at the working guy. These guys are overlooked. We were on their side. A lot of politics in the thing too. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It all came out of an interview on a kind of a cold Saturday afternoon in Ashland, Kentucky, and
Change your life.
yeah, it was something else.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for doing this tonight.
Oh sure.
You know I love you. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, I love you too, man. I'm gonna kick back here. I'm waiting for the state of Minnesota to figure out exactly what the recreational marijuana laws are going to be. So I can just be an old hippie since I'm not running for public office, or don't have a job, don't have to piss in a
All
jar.
right. I can't do that. I just it's so messed up. It's unbelievable. I'm
Well,
having a hard enough time waking up.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, it's been years and years, but I always liked it, and
Yeah.
so I don't know what it would do to me now. It phase out.
Well, I don't have to tell you, there's a lot of people our age who are really into it,
Well, yeah, because that was, part of our coming of age experience.
Yeah.
And so it's the mellow stuff. Yeah, they've got to legalize the LSD and psilocybin. You could grow your own mushrooms and stuff. And,
Well, all comes creepy off the ceiling.
yeah, out there. Yeah, yep. Yeah, get a little trip going on. LSD, misunderstood. It was being tested by the government, thinking it was going to make
That's right.
soldiers
Yeah.
more focused and doing all kind of
They
stuff with
basically
it.
started it, basically.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and when Tim Leary was experimenting, he was a psychologist, and it was for him. It was about uh, it does enhance your ability to take in information and visual, uh,
Yeah.
audio, the uh, taste, smell, everything. And I knew him in Los Angeles, and he was doing these things where he would do experiments where people would be on acid, and there would be they'd be looking at something, they'd be hearing something totally unrelated to what they're looking at, smelling something, it's like all five senses, but each one an unrelated thing. And then after the people came down off the high, what did they remember from this stuff? And for him, that was the whole point. We could take in so much more than we take in. We could use our minds uh, to do so much more if we had this enhanced situation. And so that's my memories of the
That's
stuff.
your story. You're sticking to it.
I can still I saw they shoot horses, don't they? On Four-Way Sunshine, and I can still remember like a lot. This was in 1971 or something, it was 72, and I can still remember most of the dialogue. What I remember most was by the end of that, uh, it was about these marathon dances they had in the 30s,
Uh-huh.
uh, and the people were, they would win some kind of prize at the end of it, but they would be dancing for like 4 hours at a time, and they'd get a half-hour break, and they'd dance. And uh, I remember that by the end of it, I was so tired that I didn't think I could stand up watching. I felt their pain, but
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
69 issue of Zap Comics. I
Yeah.
read it from cover to cover,
Uh-huh.
and his uh, Captain Piss Gums and his pervert pirates, my favorite part of the thing. Yeah, so these were golden moments, Jim. Golden moments that I want to bring back.
All right. Okay. I gotta go. Thank you, Tim. We'll
All
talk to
right.
you. You take care, all right?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. Always is. Always is. Take care. That's Tim Conaway. Fat guy's had a fascinating life, really amazing. Like you heard his story about how he met Larry Flint, changed his life, ended up, he went on to big journalism career, and that yeah, it's pretty cool. I was always like talking to him. So I got a couple of things here for this is part three of our show. Part three is where we talk about the paranormal stuff, the UFO stuff. By the way, I'm not a really privy to announce it yet. We have quite a few for lack of a better term, paranormal guests coming on for the rest of the summer. I'm very happy about this. For whatever reason, uh, we send out invitations to come on the show. Hardly anyone refuses, and I'm actually really glad about that. We get very few people who say no. As a matter of fact, we at this point we do get we usually some of the people don't respond, but we don't even get that very much. So the two things I got here for tonight is the fact that Avi Loeb, who's a astrophysicist, he discovered whatever the hell that thing's called, the Umaluma thing that went around the sun a few years ago that people thought might have been an alien spacecraft. Actually, they thought it might have been a dead alien spacecraft. In other words, it was unmanned, is what a lot of people thought it was, and he did too. And he said after studying it very carefully, and he's an astrophysicist, so he's looking at it through radio telescopes and stuff like that. He said he thought that it was, yeah, a dead alien spacecraft. That's what he thought. So it's basically taking his career at a whole nother level. But anyways, he's talking about the fact now. He said that in the next few years, like 20 or 30 years from now, we might have tombstones that are fitted with AI where you could talk to the dead person and they would talk back. In other words, you basically they would have the personality of the deceased embedded in them, and you could actually talk to the through AI. You could talk to the tombstone, and it would talk to you back. That's yeah. I don't I don't know if that's a good idea because here's the deal: it's not the dead person. That's the thing. I mean, even Ray Kurzweil, this has been a big thing of his. He started a whole singularity thing because he said he wanted to resurrect his dead father. I don't know. It's not going to happen. It's either a really good facsimile or a poor facsimile, but it's a facsimile either way. That's the way I look at it. And then finally, I've talked about this previously about in Colorado on this dairy farm, they found another one of these um, monoliths, these aluminum monoliths that are popping up all over the world. No one, no one's taking credit for them, although the woman who wrote this article. This was in the debrief.org. Her name is Kenna Castleberry. I'm actually going to try to get her on the show. She said that that the reporters have kind of sort of put together the fact that it might be a worldwide collective of artists who are doing this. But at any rate, she went to visit the thing. The one in Colorado turned out to be just about an hour from her house, so she went to see it. And she said basically she described the experience as odd but underwhelming. Now, the real interesting thing about these things is that all of them, there's been about a half a dozen of them that are found all over the world, all sorts of places. Here in the United States, in Vegas, Colorado, India, England, all in the middle of the desert. The ones found in Utah too. The interesting thing is they all have cement bases. They're all tethered to the ground via cement, and nobody knows how the hell they did that. Especially because, as I said in the past, there's no tracks, either human or vehicle, that lead up and back to these things. There's no one sees anything, and then putting a monolith like in the ground is one thing, but to build a concrete base for it and not have no one see you, that kind of takes it to another level. It's like just last night we were reporting about the fact that there's a crop circle in England, in Wiltshire, England, which is the primary county that has. They're known primarily. They're the capital of crop circles on Earth. And this was not a normal crop circle. Well, it was, except for the fact it turned up 500 yards from the Stonehenge Visitor Center, which is manned 24/7 with security, and no one saw it being made. So it's literally a stone's throw from the Stonehenge Visitor Center. So now the visitor center is a little ways from the Stonehenge actual monument, but the fact of the matter is there's people in the visitor center constantly. So no one saw this thing being made. No. So I don't know. It's interesting. Very few people actually think these monoliths have any paranormal or extraterrestrial origin. Everyone seems to think they're made by humans, but on the other hand, whoever's doing it is damn crafty because no one's ever seen them being installed. And like I said, they have concrete bases, so the installation is not simple, and also would take some time too. So there's that. I'm going to try to get this woman. I got her email address. I'm going to try to get her on the show. I kind of want to hear about this. Also, she writes about a whole bunch of quantum physics stuff, and that might be kind of fascinating. Micah Hanks, the guy who actually runs the debrief, was supposed to be on this program with our UFO panel. What was that, February? At the last minute, he begged off. He couldn't do it. So I'd still like to have him on too. But I'm talking about stuff I like. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we talk about here. Basically, stuff I like. So we talked to Tim Conaway today. we're talking about the UFO and paranormal stuff. And so who do we have coming up tomorrow? Santa Claus from his pool in his backyard, and Jeff Meyer maybe just flying. Like I said, he's flying to Africa on Thursday, so he doesn't know if he can do it or not. Thursday, Mark Tapscott. That should be really interesting because, like I said, Tapscott's on a first name basis with basically every single person on Capitol Hill. He's been doing it for 40 years, so he knows everybody. So we'll get some real skinny from him. Next Tuesday, Steve McIntosh. He bills himself as a developmental philosopher and an author, and he writes about both spiritual philosophy and political polarization. So we want to talk to. I mean, he's like a perfect guest for the show, and so that'll be really interesting. Next Thursday, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell. She's hopefully she will talk about the Republican National Convention next Thursday. I don't have it on the schedule yet. Like I said, I'm hoping to get our month in review panel to come on after Trump's speech on Thursday night, and we'll talk about that too, hopefully. So yeah, that fills out the next couple of weeks, and we got a lot of people coming up. So thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you wherever you are. Santa Claus tomorrow night. We'll see you later.